Talking about you got this and you got that, and you gonna murder this one and murder that one. Talking all that bullshit. I'm gonna put it to you like this, yo.
This is for the nerds, this is for the brainiacs, this what we deserve. Go ahead and play it back, you ain't gonna touch me, you not gonna do nothing, you are not above me. I bet you wish you was me, I know it, I know.
What is popping, everybody? And welcome back to another special episode of the Only Friends podcast, where it's me and my only friends, which includes but is not limited to Pipolinski, Berkshire.
Woo!
That was the first time she got it.
You didn't give her a maraca.
Oh,
Are we doing like meditation here or something?
Yeah, that was the most zen I've ever seen Conrad look.
All right, let's all do one ohm. Ready?
Oh, wow.
Fucking tone it down there, Tony Horton. All right. I don't need you bringing this P90X shit to my fucking set.
That's what he does, man. We do
What's popping, Hunt? How you feeling today?
I'm doing good. I'm a little salty that you didn't throw it to me, but that's fine.
Nah. Pipolinski Berkshire had to get it.
Yeah, the dog takes priority.
Right.
She's never got it. Look at her. She's such a good girl.
That's the full name then, Pipolinski Berkshire.
That's what I coined her for right now. Pure guapo.
You're only at like 99% getting it thrown to you when you're on the show, though.
Yeah,
That's true.
Yeah, I'm still got a pretty good average.
Ask what Landon's average is.
Probably 0.
It's 1%. I think you threw it to him once.
If you throw it to Landon, there's like a 1% chance he's actually paying attention. So it's probably good not to throw it to
Landon and Melissa just get the shaft. She was so shocked earlier this week when you threw it to her. She didn't know what to do.
I saw one a while back where you threw it to her and she was like, what's going on? Like she still had her makeup thing on or something.
She asked not to have you thrown to
Yeah,
Yeah, I think Landon's actually at exactly 1% tomorrow.
Wow.
I think I've thrown it to him 5 times over 500 episodes.
Wow. That's a lot of episodes.
I take the under on that.
Nah.
A lot of episodes.
What's poppin', Berk? How you feeling today?
Oh, well, it's Strat Chat day, so I'm excited for that. I had a coaching call prior to this. That was fun, minus the fact that we talked about preflop, which is easily the least interesting street in the world to me.
You coach somebody?
That's where you got to start, though.
Every now and again.
Is that with anybody that we know, or is it just
Kessler? Cannot divulge, but yes,
Okay.
it is somebody known. They have a TV thing coming up that we're prepping for, so
Nice.
should be fun. But I do hate preflop. I want to get that out on record, but I'm becoming very aware of how important it is when it comes to managing ranges in your post-flop lines. Not in a sense that like it affects my decision making, or sorry, not in the sense that it affects like the way that I approach strategy all that much, because nobody thinks that I have a range anyway. So they're guessing right alongside with me. But when you're playing against like studied players that understand what ranges are supposed to be comprised of, you can start to see through bullshit lines where they don't realize that they don't have the proper value support to be able to run big bluffs or vice versa. And I've had this come up twice now in blind versus blind spots in the last like 2 weeks. Despite my massive downswing, I've really fucked a couple guys, just the most disrespectful, soul snatching type of hero calls that you will ever see, in a sense where it's just like, they have to think I'm just the worst.
Are we going to be back to like 2017 Berkey where you just didn't fold a river for a whole year?
No, Hunt. This was pristine. Chef's kiss. Okay, so the first one, I won't lie, I kind of backed myself into a bit of an awkward spot. It was blind versus blind on the boat versus Ishan, and he had limp called. And honestly, like, he did nothing wrong. It's just I happened to pay close attention to certain things. And he happened to limp call very quickly in a scenario where, like, I've seen I've had enough blind on blind interaction with him throughout the course of the session where, like, some hands are cusp. You have some hands that mix 3-bet, you have some hands that are pure 3-bets, whatever. Point is that, like, he very rarely just acts quickly unless it's a pure action.
Right.
So he obviously has some subset of his range.
His range is only composed of the hands which are pure limp calls.
Correct.
Right.
And I picked up on that immediately. I have 2 queens. And it comes, man, I hope I get this board texture right because it's important. But it comes, I think, ace 7-3 2 hearts or ace 5-3 2 hearts. It's not really important. It'll matter by the end. But let's say ace 7-3 2 hearts for clarity's sake. He checks. I see bet black queens. Or sorry, I check back black queens. And then the turn comes the 5 of backdoor. So 5 of diamonds. So it's 2 hearts, 2 diamonds. And now he goes for, sorry, it was ace 6-3. There you no. God damn it. God damn it. This is so important. Let me think. 1-liner to a 4. Yeah.
Has to be ace 5-3. There can't be a 1-liner to a 4 if there's ace 6.
1-liner to a 4 on the river. The river is a deuce.
Okay.
So it's ace, by the end, it's ace deuce 3 something.
It has to be
7.
if the turn was paired and the river was a deuce, making a 1-liner to a 4. It has to be ace 5-3 5 deuce.
No, board didn't pair.
So okay, so you
Yeah.
what
So-
you said about the turn was just wrong. Okay.
What
so
did I
it
say
was-
about the turn?
Well, you said it was ace 5-3, and then you said the turn was a 5.
Oh, I was
He
just
changed
trying
it
to.
6.
I was just
Yeah.
trying to
Yeah.
figure it out. So I believe it was ace 7-3 to begin with.
Okay, so mentally you had already changed to ace 7-3, but you
No, he did. He
hadn't
said
told
it.
us
I
about
said
it.
ace 7-3
Oh, you
initially.
did? Okay,
Yeah.
okay, never
He
mind.
said he wasn't sure, and he said, let's just go with ace 7-3 for
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, never mind.
And I'm trying to figure out if it works out if it comes running 5 deuce.
Yeah.
If that puts a 1-liner to the 4. I think it does, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That puts a
Yeah,
1-liner.
yeah, it
Okay,
would.
perfect. There we go. Ace 7-3 2 hearts.
We did it.
Turn 5 of diamonds. And Ishan goes for the overbet. Now I'm pretty sure my hand is like a pure fold here. Maybe not pure, but at least mixes folds without a heart.
Yeah.
But again, I know that he is positioned into only having hands that limp call. So I can eliminate a lot of the suited connectors here that are 2-pair plus. Because a lot of those hands, the Fantastic Four, if you will, at least mix 3-bet.
Right.
So, you know, the 7-6, the 6-5, the 5-4s, these hands will at least limp raise at some at some frequency. So I'm kind of eliminating the possibility for 2-pair combos here, as well as made straights outside of 6-4. 6-4 is obviously present, but you know, you're not going to build an entire strategy around 1 or 2 combinations of value. Just doesn't make a lot of sense. So I kind of have him already like positioned towards, okay, probably has like combo draw types things, pair plus or gut shot plus, et cetera, et cetera. River comes a deuce, now completing a 1-liner to the 4, and he blasts again for like 150% pot. And I tanked for a long time because I was initially just resigned to folding. But the more I thought about it, I was like, okay, well, let's put all these things together. What hands that possess a 4 play pure limp call, then overbet the turn and overbet the river whenever they make the 1-liner? I was like, it's literally just 6-4. I'm pretty sure that like that's like the only hand. Because if he has a hand like King 4 of hearts, for example, which would be the nut flush draw on the turn, sure, he could choose to overbet that hand, but it doesn't really fit, right? It doesn't support the value that he would otherwise be choosing to do this with. And then I'm like, okay, well, you know, a pair plus a flush draw would make sense, but like what pair? He doesn't have 6-5 suited. That wouldn't make much sense because it at least considers 3-betting pre. He doesn't have 7-6 suited. That would consider 3-betting pre.
I was just saying, doesn't King 4 suited consider it sometimes?
Lowish.
Yeah.
But I mean, either way, it just like doesn't make a ton of sense to fit into the overbet size on the turn. And then I'm thinking the same thing of like if he is going thin for value, like a hand like Ace 4 suited, or Ace 4 offsuit rather. Probably also doesn't want to overbet. It's too thin. You know, I check back somewhat protected. I have better Ace X. So I ultimately just arrive at the fact of like, oh, well, like I just don't think he has any 4s. Like I just don't think there's any left. And if he shows me a hand like Ace 5 off for 2-pair, God bless, like he deserves the money. So I call.
With 2 black queens.
With 2 black queens, I call. And he shows 6-3 of hearts. And I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense here. And then fast forward to Bobby's room the other day. I have a blind versus blind spot come up where I opened Ace 7 off after a limp.
This one's sexy.
Oh, this is a fucking soul snatch. Sucked it right out of his body. He limp calls, and the board comes Ace Jack 10 all spades. He checks. Now I'm supposed to check back here, but like, you know, we get a little thin. Ace 9 bets. Why not ace 7? No spade. No big deal. Bet quarter. He calls, which is all very standard so far. Turn is like an offsuit 5. Check, check. River then becomes like an offsuit deuce, and he blocks. And all of this is fine. I would assume in theory land, he's probably playing 2 sizes on river. It's going to be like something like block and pot.
You're the small blind, yes?
I'm the big blind.
Oh, okay.
I have like no flushes as played, obviously. But again, because he's very studied and I know that he knows what to be doing pre, I know he knows what hands limp raise. And most of your limp raises are large pairs and suited broadways. So it's like he has like no big flushes. And most of the small flushes kind of want to exit the flop node through a check raise, I would assume anyway. So there aren't going to be a lot of flushes to really support a big bet on the end, which makes sense as to why he would block. And then I start to run through. It's like, wow, if he's blocking, his value range is probably like way wide here. Like he's going to have a lot of Jack X and 10X with a spade. Because I assume most of everything that peels flop is going to either have showdown value or a spade or both. And I was like, you know, if he has a spade, I bet I can get him to do something dumb. I'm going to raise. Because, like, my hand never raises, obviously.
No.
It would be terrible.
That's easy call.
Wait, what's the board? Ace, Jack, 10, what?
Ace, Jack, 10, 5 deuce.
Ace, Jack, 10, 5 deuce.
All spades on the flop, red.
And he blocks river. I think your hand can raise. I think a lot of your ace X that you check back turn is, if he bets like quarter or less on river, I think
That's
you can
what
raise.
he did, yeah.
So I looked at this spot, and I don't think I get to because I don't have enough value to support it.
Do you get to raise call, though?
You get
Because this is what the histories said.
So I get to play like king queen this way. I get to play some sets and 2 pairs this way, and go for like pretty thick value on the end. By the way, my raise size is, I'm pretty sure, supposed to be very large. So like
That makes sense. I would have thought that if you gave 2 raise sizes, it would have like a raise size that's specifically for your ace X,
right,
and then
which is practically what I did.
Yeah, right. Like you just have a smaller size for your ace X and then a bigger size for like the more polar stuff.
Yes, and that's practically what I was doing in real time.
I see, yeah.
But it was of the impression that he would overreact. In theory lane, you just kind of get exploited by choosing that smaller raise size. You just like don't really have enough strong value to support it. Like I really don't have any flushes as played.
Right.
I think I had like 1% of my range was retained as a flush. But it's one of those scenarios where it's just like, well, he's a creative player who studies, and when he has the queen of spades in his hand, he's just going to go fucking hard. So let's induce. So he bet like 400 into 14. I make it 14, and he tanks forever and makes it like 14,000. And I can't express to you how fast I call. I mean, and it's such an ego free roll because you're either going to get shown a flush or not. And if you get shown a flush, you just muck. It doesn't matter. I could have ace 7 or I could have top set.
Yeah.
No one's ever going to fucking know.
Right.
But when you beat him in the pot for 400% pot and he rolls over the queen jack O with the queen of spades and you just table the red ace 7, the soul just got now I lost yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
If that wasn't apparent.
Yeah.
We kept up our 10-game losing streak and made it 11.
Yeah.
But
You sound like the Pirates.
They're only
three games skid, man. Fucking relax.
Just relax, okay?
Relax. Now the Pens are a different story.
Oh, no.
Pens were the hottest team in the NHL. They went 7-1-2 down the stretch.
Didn't make it.
They didn't even get a chance to play for it tonight.
Oh.
Capitals won yesterday.
Yeah.
It's over for us.
Yeah.
Same for Detroit. So Detroit had a fucking sick game yesterday where they
had to win in regulation to get in, and they won in shootout.
No, I don't think they could even win in regulation to get in. Really?
They finished 1 point behind the Capitals.
Oh, okay. So fucking with okay, so if the Capitals would have lost, they would have won.
If the Capitals would have lost, like the Pens would still be on the table.
Gotcha.
Go Knights, go.
Yeah.
Go Knights, go. Actually, I think the Knights are like a good team to bet. They've been here, they've done it, and they might be
won last year.
Yeah, like they won like 3 out of the last 5 years or something like that.
Won what?
Two?
Won what?
One. They
won one cup.
How many
won
times
one
did they
cup.
go to the Stanley Cup?
Twice. They went their
Okay.
first season,
Okay.
and they've been to the cup finals twice.
Oh, okay. I thought they
Okay.
lost twice. Maybe. Yeah. They made the semifinals maybe a couple times.
Yes, they're very good.
There's a
Yeah.
very good core, very
But,
good
like-
team, and it's like that sounds like a good bet.
Okay.
All right, I'll just take
I'll
the other
book it.
side.
Yeah,
Whatever the other side is. that's
whatever
what
you
I'm
want to
doing.
put
Well,
down.
you guys got the field.
I don't know, man. I thought the Knights we had a chance to repeat, but I guess not now.
It's over.
Rangers.
It's all over. Rangers had the best record in the league.
Yep.
That means they're
crushing it.
doomed to get exited first round.
I mean,
for
Rangers
sure.
are like notoriously known for getting fucking exited first round after Messier and Gretzky are gone.
Messier and Gretzky.
Yep, way long back.
Messier and Gretzky.
Yep, 98, 2000,
Landon wasn't even born.
98. 94?
94.
1894.
Yeah. I think
Wasn't it?
Gretzky's dead. Messier and Gretzky. I mean, to be fair, I'd throw Lemieux and Yager up in casual conversation, I guess.
I mean,
but-
that's the last time that they didn't get bounced in the first round, it feels like.
Stop.
I mean, they've been really bad in the playoffs.
I can't imagine they're that uncompetitive, but who knows? I hate the Rangers. Fucking Adam Graves broke Mario
best.
Lemieux's wrist. Fuck that guy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, we have a fun episode today with Strat Chat with Matt. I'm trying to get a rebrand in here.
You mean that wasn't already Strat Chat that we just did for like
No.
15 minutes?
No,
No, that was just Berkey.
that was the precursor.
That was
Yeah.
whatever is the opposite of in the muck. That was like, maybe it was a who's cooking
They were
segment.
in the muck.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when somebody else is in the muck
Yeah.
because of you. That's what that was.
That's right. That's right. You put them in the muck. I shouldn't have told those stories because I know that they just went home to their group chats and they just text everybody and they're like, "This guy is an idiot," and they're not wrong.
Right.
They're definitely not wrong. But now they have the context as to what led me to being an idiot. And
Right.
that's problematic.
Here's the question. Do you ever think about, like, in a spot like that, you mentioned you raise the river and then you just, like, snap, right?
Yeah.
Do you ever think about that when you snap there, it basically communicates to them that the reason you raised was to induce?
No, I want him to know that.
Okay, so
I want
you're
him to-
deliberately doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because a lot of the time for me, like, there's certain spots where I've already pretty much decided I'm snapping river, but I'll wait like at least a few seconds because I don't want to make it so obvious that I'm just, if I'm going to make a call with like a hand that's not a snap,
Yeah.
I don't want to make it super obvious that I'm snapping.
You both are in the meta, but for two different reasons.
Right.
Yeah.
There are a few people in the game that I really enjoy their company and I have, a fair amount of respect for their play, and he's one of them. So this to me is just gamesmanship. Like I absolutely want him to know that this was completely intentional and he just got fucked.
Not that you like made a crying call.
Right, like,
and,
oh, I
"God,
made a
fucking
mistake and I have to cover
like,
my ass
now
now.
you got
and
got.
Yeah, no, I want him to think twice before he puts 14,000 in the middle next time.
Fair enough.
It was fun though. Before we get to the Strat Chat stuff, we do have a couple other things. This Kessler, huh?
Oh my God.
He's out there. Nothing makes him happier right now than being mentioned on the pod, by the way.
Are you gonna give him all that fake money from the fake bet that never
Yeah,
happened?
you owe him $1,000.
Okay, so this doesn't bother me as much as it bothers everybody else.
But how can it not bother? Well, it bothers
Because
me.
it's so dumb.
Yeah, it's just like, well, how much money do you owe me? It's like, I owe you nothing. You
Alan,
didn't
if
accept
this-
the bet.
if this-
Alan, he owes you $1,000.
If this was a troll and he was saying it, your guy didn't even make it the heads up. It's like where like it's a joke because he knows
stupid.
that it doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Then I'd be like, okay, that's funny. Like, oh,
Right,
your guy sucks. He
right,
didn't
right.
even make it the heads up. But the fact that he genuinely thinks this means anything whatsoever is the dumbest fucking thing. For
The
a guy who's
funniest
been
part,
in poker for
the funniest
so
part
long.
is too. The whole thing started with him. He literally tweeted. He said, "This is the final four. Somebody create odds." So I replied and I said, "I'll take Landon plus 450."
Yeah.
And he's just like telling me how unfair that is, and I go counter, like just counter.
Yeah.
And he always wants things to be true odds, based off of zero skill. So he's like, well, the true odds are 3-1 because everybody's 25% to win the tournament. It's like, well, that can't be true.
Right.
Okay, fine. Give me 3-1 on anyone in the field and let me pick, and we can agree to that because I'm gonna pick chance. Fine. Like I'll just take chance. He's the biggest sun runner of the three.
Take a chance on chance.
I got to be a favorite here, But he would never do that because he knows that's absolutely dusting money. Obviously, there are advantages and disadvantages in heads up, albeit they might be small. So, of course, I came in super high, but that's how you negotiate. You respond. You say, I'll lay you 4-1. I would have snapped it up in a fucking heartbeat, and he'd be $1,000 richer right now. You know, that would just be how this works. But what's funny to me is that he boasts about how he's always right when these bets are proposed. Yeah. And he just totally ignores the fact
you take the long shot.
That I always take the long shot. I'm always taking like one person versus the field.
Yeah.
Or something along those lines where
You're
it's like
supposed to win 75% of the time.
Yeah, it's like
you don't get to like not take a bet
Maybe
and
more.
then boast about how you would have won the bet if you took the bet. Like you don't get to have it both ways, you know? Like it's so absurd.
What an absolute nightmare. But that isn't even why I brought Kessler up, because I think all that stuff's funny and it wasn't run a show, and you know it's kind of worth like kind of poking at him a little bit. But I fell down a bit of a rabbit hole yesterday, and I found this to be very fascinating. The number of caches all time. Now we talked about this off air, so I can't like surprise you or anything like that. But I was shocked to see how few the total number of caches are all time
On Hendon Mob.
on Hendon Mob.
Yeah.
So tracked tournaments over the last 21 years, 22 years, something along those lines. The leading person of caching of all time is Miami John at 588. Now, we were kind of discussing what you could accomplish online in a year, but I think like for sure rest of world, 588 caches in a year is doable.
Yeah, rest of the world, if you're grinding, you can play 5,000-6,000 in a year these days. Like even though they don't let you, it used to be possible to hit 10,000 in a year easy because they used to let you mass table. Like now you can't do that because Stars limits tables, I think.
Like, what do you think Mormon's lifetime number of caches online is?
Like an insane amount.
10,000.
Right.
Yeah, it's
got to be.
lot.
I mean, it's for sure in the thousands.
Even
right?
mine is really high because back in the days when I was playing like 180-man sit and goes, I've definitely played over 100,000 online tournaments.
Right.
So I probably even have 10,000 online caches. It's just half of them were for like $20 in a $5 buy-in. You know?
You see why Kessler doesn't count these?
Yeah.
Okay, so
Online doesn't count.
I kind of want to carry this conversation a little bit further because I think that this demonstrates something that, to some degree, I think Landon's finally like coming to grips with, and it's a fascinating thing because you really have to trick yourself in some sort of capacity to play live MTTs, in believing that it's your ability that's generating the results and not just strict variance, that you're not just left side bell curve. So what do you think that an average cache rate is? Not a good one, but an average cache rate, a break even player. What do you think their cache frequency is in live?
Well, theoretically, it would
10%.
be equal to whatever the percentage of the field is paid.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah,
okay, so probably
say
12 and a half.
12 to
This is Chris
15%,
Mormon on
yeah.
3 websites, by the way.
Wow. Okay, so he's somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000, or sorry, 12,000.
Yeah, I
This is
almost
and
nailed
that's
it.
just 3 sites here.
Yeah, and that's not even including. Oh, it is including GG. Okay, but that's not including WSOP. It's not including ACR. Not
Yeah.
including.
All the sites that don't exist
Whatever
anymore,
else is
like
playing,
Ultimate
right?
Bet.
Party Poker,
Party.
888,
Yeah.
all that shit.
So he's probably closer to 20K.
Probably.
That's wild, man. That's a lot of caches. Okay, so let's assume it's about 15%, right? So that means Miami John, and I don't know if he's a break-even player or not, but I doubt that he was a big MTT winner. I mean, he has 588 caches, lifetime earnings 6.3 million.
Back in the day, he's probably a winner.
Yeah, probably, but I mean, it tapers off. So, about 6 million. So he's basically averaging about 10K per cache, right? Let's assume now that, so we're assuming that that's about a 15% cache rate, although for a long time it was probably 10%. So that will give him some sort of skill edge if we're assuming he's caching that often. That means that he's probably played lifetime 2,700 events. Let's see, 2,700 times 0.15. My math is decent. It's not the best. It's decent. That would yield you 400 caches. So probably a little closer to like 3,500.
Yeah, 3,500.
So 3,500 events over the course of 21, maybe 22 years. That's fucking nothing.
Yeah.
Literally nothing.
It's 2 months online, 1 month for some sickos,
So like if you put that in a prime dope variance calculator, you just see these wild results, right?
Right.
And I bring this up because I think that this is a good indication as to why live MTTs are what they are, why it's so hard and puzzling to wrap our head around who are the winners, who are the losers, why somebody like, or I shouldn't say somebody like, but like why the Jesse Lonuses, the Beckers, the Chance Corneths, the Darren Eliases, why they are so greatly revered. Because time-wise, less so Jesse and Becker, but more so Chance and Darren, the time frame is very significant. Like Baldy is in the top 10 all-time cashes. He's the only person under 50. And he comes in at number 8 with 445. Like that level of consistency is unrivaled. But from the sheer math standpoint, it almost doesn't even matter if they're doing something right? Like it means that like if they're very talented, maybe they're one standard deviation higher than somebody with less talent as far as like what their return is. But when you look at their overall career and how much money they've actually earned, it's impossible not to view them as just straight sun running. And that's why like when I talk about MTT specifically, but even poker as a whole, live poker especially, we're all just fucking victims of survivorship bias. All of us have just like ran really, 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 really fucking hot.
It is funny to think that, like, especially before, solvers and the way we look at the game now, like coming up, when we came up, right, the early 2000s, where you just saw these live tournament players just crush.
Yeah.
And you're like, this person's a fucking god. They got to figure it out. They're so good. And they just be like, let's listen to them and figure out what they're doing to, try to replicate it or try to, learn this strategy. But they could just, like you said, just could have been sun running the entire time. They're no different than you were. It's just the cards fell where they needed to at the right time.
At least a few people I can think of who were coaches in the early days, not the early days, but like the post Black Friday days. So like the first few years of my career, other coaches that I could look at and I was like, this guy does not seem like he knows what he's doing, but he's looked at as a high level tournament guy. And I think looking back, like it was just guys who were on huge heaters at the highest stakes they played. And people looked at that and said, wow, this guy must be doing something. And it was just some really punty guy who plays crazy and just ran super good for a year and a half. And now everyone looks at him as like, this guy's really good. Let's have him coach,
I think if you do, I think there's a certain style, obviously, that lends you to, like these sun runs, right?
Going on heaters.
Yeah. When like, if you're super, super tortoisey, you might not, have these like huge scores back to back to back or whatever.
Well,
you don't allow yourself to
Rigby
get
comes to
lucky.
mind.
Right. Yeah. A guy like Rigby could just go on a run because he just
but even over a small sample of like 3,000 tournaments, like shout out to my man Rigby. I got love for you, homie. But like if he plays 3,000 career tournaments, he's going to be a net loser. As it stands,
right?
If you're V-pipping 3-deuce,
right? But there 100%
of the time,
right? But there could be a stretch of 100 or 200 tournaments where he just goes off.
That's all samples.
Yeah,
that's all samples. If you zoom in, you're going to see these stretches. And the big thing is capital, right? Like when these sun runs occur, the ones that survive are the ones that take that capital and they find ways to leverage it in their favor, right? They do things that yield them some EV. And I think it's really critical to understand, like, we're not saying that there are no winning players. We're saying that even the winners are running well above expectation. So somebody like Chance, for example, is a very skilled MTT player. He certainly has a win rate in everything that he enters. Now, the question then becomes, is it as high as it appears on paper? And the answer is almost certainly no. He's averaging like, I looked it up yesterday, I think he averages like 120K per cash. And let's say his ABI is like $10,000. He's probably showing an ROI here of like 120%ish. Almost impossible to maintain that over the course of a career.
Well, that's the thing. Nobody's ever gonna like their results are never gonna reflect their win rate, either good or bad, either side, right?
Because the sample's too small.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's just like you'll never know what someone's actual true win rate is.
And here's the other thing as well, which is that heaters and downswings are self-amplifying in that when you're on a heater, you are getting dealt the top of the deck over and over again. And especially if you're a player that plays a lot of hands, you are now going to be perceived to not have it, which means that if you continue to keep having it, you're going to continue to keep getting paid off. Vice versa, if you are on a downswing, even if you're playing perfectly, players are going to see you having bottom of range. They're going to be more likely to, not fold to your bluffs, et cetera, et cetera. And if you continue to get dealt bottom of range, you're going to be more and more likely to just run into situations where you have to bluff, but it doesn't work, and so on and so forth. So when you're on a huge heater, you're actually more likely to be perceived in a way where you just keep the heater going because you keep getting paid in spots where you have it. And when you're on a downswing, you're going to keep not getting a fold because they keep seeing you not have it. It's like a weird dynamic.
Compounding kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's really hard to get away from that. You have to just be on a downswing and then start running good again, or be on an upswing and then stop getting good hands,
Baby Dick just texted me. He said the big rig said book it.
We'll book it.
One of us will die before he plays 3,000 tournaments. I can fucking promise you that. So I want to bring this back full circle to Kessler, because I think that we often look at Hendon Mob results and we say oh, this is useless. We can never calculate buy-ins, blah, 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 blah. But we actually can get a rough estimate within some degree of confidence. So, as I mentioned, he's played somewhere in the neighborhood of 3,500 events. And he's cashed for 476, which is good for 6th all time. So he's the 6th most frequent casher, not most frequent, but he has 6 most cashes of all time, right? However, you can see that he only has $4.38 million in earnings. Now, I don't know what his ABI is. That's where a little bit of guesswork has to come in. But we do know that he plays a lot of small stuff and not really a ton of big stuff. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
Do you think it's reasonable to assume that the ABI of the tournaments in which someone has cashed is basically the same as their actual ABI?
Yeah, probably. Because there are going to be too many outliers.
Yeah, people are going to be maybe a little bit less likely to cash in the events that are at the top of their buy-in range, but generally speaking, if you're looking at Hendon Mob, if someone's average buy-in of the events they actually cash is 500, then it's going to probably be pretty in that region.
Yeah. Yeah. So, he plays a ton of volume at the circuits and stuff like that. So the 200 to 1K level. But he also plays full WSOP schedules, etc. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that he's playing an ABI of, I don't know, let's call it 1750.
Wow. That's fucking huge.
Yeah, it's not right.
I think that's huge. He plays all the 10K mix during the summers. He plays all the...
But he plays millions of tournaments a year. He
does not play millions of tournaments a year. He's played 3,500 roughly in his career. That's he plays a tournament. Probably 125 a year. So if he plays...
No, here's the thing, right? If we assume that Kessler is at least a break-even player, it's 3,500. If we assume there's a possibility he's just losing, it could be 5,000. So it could be more, which, possibility of Kessler's losing in various events is definitely there.
Sure. Yeah, that's very fair.
I would say his ABI is about 1K.
Okay.
That would have been probably where I would guess. Yeah. 800 to 1,200 that region.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, man, I don't know. He's playing all the 3,500s.
But find that Kessler tracker account on Twitter.
Every single circuit event, he plays the fucking all the mix events for those. That brings it down.
He plays all the dusty shit.
Plays a lot of fucking events, man.
A lot of 200.
A lot of mixed events, and mixers are smaller.
Well, I mean, you can make a rough estimate on what he plays a year. It's probably 150 events.
Yeah,
that makes sense. If I can name.
Kessler, if you're watching, just let us know what your ABI is.
If I could name 25 or 30 events that he plays that are over 2K, it seems pretty difficult to assume that the others...
I'd be really surprised if it was over 25 to 30 events over 2K in a year. I think it's more like 4 or 5.
I was going to say
No.
7
4 or 5? He plays all the mix events. That's a dozen events in and of itself.
Is it?
Yeah, at the World Series, he plays all the championship events.
All the mixed events of 5K and 10K, he plays all those.
All the championship events are 10Ks. And he plays all of them. He played the 50K last year as well. But yeah, okay. So whatever. Let's say it's 1K. And let's say that, he is a break-even player, so he's played 3,500. So that's 3.5 million in buy-ins lifetime. And he's cashed for 4.3.
He first said last year it was 1,250 his average buy-in.
Okay. So we're not too far off.
No, and he had 237 entries costing 300K, I believe. 53 caches for 209K.
Okay, so let's say that he's averaged 200 a year for the last 10 years and maybe 150 a year for the 10 years prior to that because MTTs weren't quite as popular.
Yeah.
Right, so that would be roughly 3,500. Okay, so pretty spot on.
Yeah.
That means that Kessler's a very small winner. He's making like $1 million over the course of 20 years, which means that on average, he is
Making 50K
just
a year.
barely beating the rake. Less, right? No. Yeah, you're right. No. Yeah.
Yeah, 50K a
Yeah,
year.
50K a year. Yeah. So, just a very small return. And we can come up with that number like relatively easily. That probably demonstrates like that he fits well within this standard deviation of being like a 5% ROI loser or a 5% ROI winner, 10% ROI winner, right? Like, I guess it depends like what his annual buy-ins are, but I guess it really doesn't, right? If we're assuming,
it doesn't.
If we're assuming he has 3.5 million in buy-ins, so he's actually like a 30% ROI guy as it stands.
And Kessler just plays poker for fun.
Yeah, of course. But I'm saying like this becomes a lot easier to demonstrate whenever we start to look at the guys who have big numbers, right? Like Kessler's in the top 6 of caches, so he's going to be in the top 6 of volume as well.
Yeah, sure.
If he's roughly a 30% ROI guy as it stands over a sample of 3,500 tournaments, I imagine if we looked at Prime Dope, what the standard deviations of that would be he's probably like somewhere in the 70th percentile to be a break-even player. And then, on either side of that distribution, he could be plus or minus 30% ROI, I would imagine.
I love talking about Kessler because Efro fucking loves this topic.
He's on it, bro.
He said he's down many, many millions over the years.
He keeps telling me that, and I just don't understand how.
I don't believe it. I don't honestly see it.
In tournaments?
Yeah, I guess.
That could be down many, many millions.
Oh, no, man.
He would have to have played. He would have had to. Then he would have had to have played, I guess, like 10 million in tournament.
In my head, he breaks even. He's just absolutely. I just think he doesn't lose much.
No, he wouldn't have to play 10 million in tournaments to be down many millions.
No, he just,
or whatever it would be, 8 million, 7 million.
He would just never
right?
cash. He would never cash over the
4.3.
summer. He would never cash over the summer for a year or a couple of years.
Yeah.
So if he has 4.3 in cashes, many, many millions is. What do we consider many, many millions?
More than 2.
Okay, 3 is not many, many, many. 3
many.
3 is a few million.
Each many is 1 million. Come on.
Yeah. Thank you, Hunt.
There you go.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Sure.
He said, do you know how many times he played the 50K PPC? His WSOP schedule for years was over 250K. He plays every 10K mixed. So, yeah, I mean, that
would make me think that his ABI is a little bit higher. But anyway.
That's what I'm saying. His ABI would have to be a lot.
Honestly, his ABI
higher.
was almost certainly higher his first 10 years because tournaments weren't as popular and the buy-in costs were just a lot higher. Like, if he played a full schedule in like 2008, that's like mostly going to be 5 and 10K events.
Yeah, that makes sense.
With a handful of like 1,500 sprinkled in and stuff like that. But anyway, I'm not doing this to like
This isn't the Kessler episode.
deep dive into Kessler.
That's what we're doing.
But it is a fun exercise considering his go-to is to throw people's Hendon Mobs in their face. And the irony of it all is this man is 6th all-time in caches with 445. You know where your boy's at?
Well, what's your total?
Well, 4.7
cashes?
million, which is more than Kessler's.
You have as many. You have just slightly less caches than him. Or?
I've a few less caches than him.
So he has how many?
445, I think, is his total caches. 475. My apologies.
So what are you like? 400, 350?
I would bet he has more WSOP caches than I have caches lifetime period.
100%.
I have 80.
If you're counting circuits.
I have 89 total caches ever, which means I've probably played somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 tournaments live, maybe 600 at most. And we're out there,
Yeah.
Where do you think the numbers are for the rest of us? Like, what do you think Tortoise's number of caches
I looked at Tortoise's.
Oh, how many caches I have?
Yeah, he's like
39-ish. 39?
Yeah, I had almost just
trying to figure out
double
what
my
I think
volume is
mine
pretty
would be.
low.
I think I would
live
guess mine
tournaments.
is probably about 60-ish.
I know that Landon is very quickly approaching me
Oh, really?
I think he
Well,
was
then I don't know where I am because I'm pretty sure I have like 28 or so WSOP.
Landon's
he
been playing
is.
live for like 3 years. I think he has like 70 caches or something along those lines. Let's see. Matt Hunt. Oh, there are a lot of you. There's Matthew Hunt. And
Yeah, almost every time I cache, I have to email them to be
There it
like,
is.
that's not the right Matt Hunt.
I'll assume it's the one that.
It's the one with
The
the,
one
with
with
the
my
British
picture
flag.
on it.
Yeah, and the British flag.
Yes.
So yeah, but that
English
the
flag.
page he's
English flag, I
showing
mean?
isn't the
Yeah.
one that shows your total caches.
Ah,
You would be at 42
42? Really?
if this one's accurate. I can't find your name though. It just took me to the page after I searched.
Well,
your name.
I
I
think
have to step it up so I can get above you before the end
seems-
of after
I mean,
it seems
WSOP.
low. That feels really
You
low.
know,
89 felt low. 20
Wow, what the
years?
fuck?
You
You
know,
don't
like
have
cashing
two
like
caches?
4 times a year?
you don't have to look at mine, but do you know what it is?
I do not, but I can look at it. I can find anything.
My result, I have a decent amount online on Hendon Mob, so it says 90 here though.
For live?
No, well, there's some online. Like
Oh.
any of the whatchamacallits that I played, like the circuit events and stuff like that.
No. That's
Wait,
not
you're,
how. That's
you're
not how.
Conrad
Hendon Mob-
Simpson the third? I didn't know that.
I am. There will
cool.
never be a fucking fourth. Let me tell you. Let me tell you about my name. All right.
Yeah.
So I grew up on Coram, Long Island. It's like a very not small, but people might know each other, whatever. So whatever. I'm driving with one of my friends. We get pulled over. Cops come get us, and they're like, "Hey, license registration. Both of us give your license." So we give our license, and the cop's like, "Wait, hold the fuck up. Conrad Simpson? Kevin Campbell? Wait, your brother and your dad? Oh, get the fuck out of the car." So there will never be another Conrad Simpson ever. Ever.
Name's tarnished.
Great.
It's fucking
Is that what
rough,
you're saying?
man. It's rough. Rough life.
All right, let's see what Conrad's.
It makes being the third. It makes you sound like you're important. It makes it sound like you're from a
Lineage.
distinguished family.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wait till you
exactly.
hear my middle name.
Oh wow, I don't know what that would be.
Wow, Conrad at 66.
Yeah. Conrad
Is it Cornelius?
Conrad Clinton Simpson.
I would like to
Wow.
say Cornelius would have been nice.
Yeah.
Cornelius was pretty
Clinton.
fun.
Clinton.
Hunt, we need to get you out in these live streets a lot more. 42.
We do. What the fuck? 42
40
caches?
you're rivaling Tortoise.
I thought I was way beyond that. Holy shit. Because I was pretty sure I had 20-something WSOP, so I just assumed that was like a fairly small portion of it. But it looks like that's
Sounds
half
like
of
it's
it.
all of it.
Yeah, I
yeah,
got 42. I got 39. Is that what you said?
Landon's at 60. Conrad's at 66.
60 caches.
Lamanna.
Not very much time.
Me and Landon probably played
Landon is a professional live tournament grinder. These guys don't know, man.
Landon
They're
and I
about to take
played-
a fucking bath.
the same amount of. I probably only played like 6 tournaments before. Like we probably played the same amount.
Lamanna has
started at the same
49.
time, I should say.
49 caches?
49 caches.
Oh, I have more than Hunt.
Wow.
Showers on.
Showers.
Yeah, but he has,
Absolute
That'll change
showers.
after this WSOP probably.
No,
but his Hendon Mob's twice as big as yours.
Yeah, well.
That's
his,
not good.
his average buy-in is a lot bigger than mine as well.
I don't know about that. My average bind's not that high. I've got caches on Hendon Mob going back to 2013 or something when I was.
The
I
one
probably
I'll
had-
tell you what, you never played lower than me.
I tell you what I probably do have is I probably have more flags than any of you guys. Caches
That's-
in different
for
countries.
sure.
You have the 120 at the Grosvenor.
No, I don't have the Grosvenor. I should have the UK flag. I think I should have the Isle of Man, France, the US. I don't think I have Canada.
I have US and Canada.
Just US and
I
Canada.
need to get Canada on mine. I only got Bahamas.
Oh, Bahamas. I got Bahamas too.
Pipolinski's got
and-
how many caches?
Oh,
Pipcam.
I just think I know that this was like, to me this was a little bit fun, but I also think it's like just so hilarious to me when these old heads will just throw up a Hendon Mob profile as if like
Oh my
that's
God.
supposed to define somebody.
Right. Well,
Like when Kessler like tried to flex on Graph Teckle and like posted
that
his
was
live.
funny.
It's like, what are you doing, man? You couldn't be any more clueless. Or like when D-Negs like threw up Matt's Hendon Mob, it's like, what the fuck did you expect it to look like? 10 million in earnings? He doesn't play high rollers.
right, it is irrelevant, but there's really nothing else to point to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Pointing to it, it's not about pointing to it. It's about the context through which you point to it.
Right, no, I get it.
If you
but-
point to a guy's Hendon Mob and he has $1 million in earnings and his ABI is $200, that guy's fucking good.
Right. No,
Right?
for sure.
If you point to a guy's Hendon Mob and he has 50 million in earnings and his ABI is 250K, it's like, okay, congrats.
Yeah.
I guess. Like, it's all fucking relative, and that context.
My ABI is $10.
Right, exactly.
300,000 in cashes is just
300,000 in cashes is literally all main event cashes. Every one of them. All 49 cashes.
That biggest cash on there is that main event.
Look at Jonathan Duhamel's like Hendon Mob or something. It's like, what percentage of that is one cash?
Yeah.
Well, it's two. He won the little one, or the big one for one drop.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, wow.
Well, it was funny because before all these like super high rollers and the Triton events and all that stuff, when you look at the all-time money list, like the top 10 was just filled with just main event winners.
Yeah.
Right.
There is I think you can filter Hendon for under 50K buy-in.
Yes,
I
you can.
say.
You can.
And I think DNEGS is top of that. But that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, he definitely grinds. And I imagine like it'd be interesting. We'll never actually see these stats, but it'd be interesting to segregate his below 50K buy-ins and see what the ROI is there versus like above 50K buy-ins and see what the ROI is there. Because I imagine like the higher the buy-ins, the closer to zero you get.
Yeah.
If not below. But yeah, that was a fun exercise. Figured since Hunt was here, we'd talk a little tournaments, and I don't know tournament strategy, so the best I could do was show everybody that it's all fucking luck.
You were talking about how you're
Make sure
coming
you
to
come
play.
to the MTT Academy.
You were literally talking about how you're coming to tournaments next week.
Yeah, it's all luck.
You're in. You're in.
But I'm not in. We're not going to Texas. That's been squadooshed. We're gonna stick around here, and then
we'll get you in some tournaments this summer. That's for sure.
Oh, he'll play a few. He always
He just always
does.
says that he doesn't. He plays on a
I hope I
fucking
don't
schedule.
have to. While we're at it, want to give you guys a quick reminder that we are featured by Champions Club this week. They are bringing the PGT to Houston, Texas. It's going to be the smallest buy-in the PokerGo Tour has yet offered. Main event is a 3,300 with 8 starting flights, 3 of them of which are turbo flights. Really great structure, 40 minutes day 1, 60-minute day 2, and final table. The property is beautiful. It's a previously converted hotel into now a hotel card room. Can't say enough good things about Isaac and the group out at Champions. They're doing literally everything right. They have on-property security. You can wire your funds. Everything is just basically run the exact same as you would in a Vegas casino. So a lot of props to those guys. Best of luck for them getting this tournament series off. There will be satellites every day, multiple times a day to get into the main event cheaply. There will also be a bunch of 5K, 10K, and some PLO events that will also be qualifiers for the PGT. So if you're looking to up your points, or you just want to try to play a couple PokerGo tournaments with a reasonable buy-in level, this is your opportunity. Most of the schedule is sub 10K, so I think this is a really good opportunity for those mid-state guys that are looking to take a shot into the big leagues and play a nice $2 million guarantee with many starting flights. That Texas poker, man, it's built different.
I tell you what I like from that intro video is that there was a a shot of some black cards, like cards with black faces, like 2 aces where the card was black and the ace was like silver or gold or something.
Yeah,
I was like,
gold.
that looks cool.
That
I
looked
would
cool.
play with that deck.
I'll tell you what I like from that video. Did you see
The
the
steak?
ribeye?
Oh, yeah.
Did you see that juicy ribeye?
That bone in?
Yeah, bone in,
Oh,
almost
God,
tomahawk.
yeah.
Oh,
Absolutely.
Can always rely
I'm
on
gonna have
you
to get a
pick
steak
out a
tonight,
good steak.
man. Yeah, I want steak.
Absolutely, man. All right, let's get to the third Strat Chat topic of the day, I guess. And this is this actually came up organically on my Twitter feed today, coincidentally enough. Sarah O'Connor posted, does anybody else hate playing against drunk players? I personally hate it. And coincidentally, I was like, well, we're actually talking today about environments that are like too wild and crazy. So I guess this is a topic that is a real pain point for people. And I'm such a cynic. Like, I just quote tweeted ours, and it was like, is playing in a game with too much action really a problem? Hint, no. It's just not. Like, playing in nitty games is the place where all of your time goes to die. But this does kind of come full circle to the conversation we were just having about MTTs and the time factor, the sample size factor. Truth of the matter is, when you're talking about live cash, even somebody like myself that plays a lot, like I think I played 1,500 hours last year, which is pretty high volume for me. Yeah.
That might be your highest ever.
Not ever, but definitely since like I was grinding 10, 20, 40.
Yeah.
And you know, that probably equates to somewhere in the neighborhood of like 35, 40,000 hands, maybe a little bit more because 56 hours of that was heads up and we were obviously seeing more hands there. But
you could have done that 13 hours online.
Yeah, that's not entirely false. That's the point though, right? Like, is the sample is really small. So what ends up happening is when you're forced into a scenario where you just don't get to ever experience the long run, like we kind of all have to just agree to that, even though we have to think about the game through the lens of the long run, in order for theory to make any sense to us, in order for the structure of the game to work. The truth of the matter is the majority of your win rate is going to be made or lost in a lot of these outlier scenarios. A drunk guy shows up to the table and just loses 2,000 big blinds. That's going to attribute a big chunk of your win rate for that year. How many of those 2,000 big blinds were you able to capture? And on the flip side, how often do you lose in that spot? Very, very, very big, because risk is higher than it usually is, right? So I understand, I guess, to a certain degree, why people get uncomfortable when games are too splashy, when games are wild, when there's a drunk person in the game, etc. But what really flipped the switch for me, not that that was ever an uncomfortable scenario for me, because like I am definitely promoting action, trying to gamble it up. I want to do as much. I want to do as much as possible to make pots large and make sure that the average pot size is bigger than usual. But what flipped the switch for me in the sense of recognizing that it was important for me to not get swept up in the action, for me not to just loosely start calling off, bleeding big blinds, making, borderline bad plays based off of the excuse that, well, I'm playing against a drunk idiot. What flipped the switch for me was recognizing that you actually do have a lot of control in these environments if you take a strategy to the table to absorb all of that win rate that's being lost. And for me, it came down to being able to quantify things. When you're able to look a drunk guy in the face and know that if the long run existed, which it doesn't, but if in theory it existed, this man is losing like 5 big blinds per hand he plays. Mm-hmm. That's an insane amount of big blinds. Like that win rate even being divvied up amongst the other 8 players evenly is a huge contribution. Like suddenly, if all 8 players are divvying up 5 big blinds per hand, suddenly you cannot lose.
Right.
You can't lose. You could probably pure fold your blinds and still show a profit at that table. Or at least it would become very, very, very close, right? Mm-hmm. So if you're at all capable of even defending your blinds, you're going to show a profit in that environment over the long run. Once that clicked, and then I became kind of more aware of like, but what if? What if I capture more than my fair share of that 5 big blinds?
Right.
What if I develop a strategy where those who are risk averse are now maybe only capturing like 1/10 of a big blind of that win rate because I'm scooping up like a blind of it or blind and a half? What if this guy gives me more action than the next guy? What if I have a strategy where I'm willing to go for it against this guy so much more often that now the reaction from my players behind might cost them win rate, right? And this is all kind of demonstrated in stand-up game, right? Stand-up game is a prop for the environment that replicates everybody being drunk.
It really does. No, it really does. It's fucking
It's kind of
amazing.
like the best way to describe it.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great.
It's like, instead of taking shots at 7 p.m. and everybody just playing drunk for the next 2 hours, we're just going to play stand-up.
This will be demonstrated in the next, not this season, but the next season.
The one that's
Poker
coming
Out
out
Loud.
soon.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
There's some wild shit
wild.
that happened.
I may have brain fucked Hunt by
Yeah, you might have
talking
did.
strategy about it prior to playing.
Right, right. You spent an hour and
also-
a half talking strategy, and then you went downstairs and were like, okay, go ahead.
Brain fucked me by 2-outing me for like 800 bigs or something.
that was a good one.
Spoil
That
that.
also was, yeah.
I forgot about that.
Fucked my brain too.
I forgot about, man, that
You didn't forget about it.
unlucky.
Yeah.
We're just unlucky.
Sometimes you're just
You were
unlucky.
never winning that hand. Once I saw those cards flipped
I was
up.
drawing dead.
I mean, hey, you got your money in with the best of it against the drunk
know,
guy.
I know, right?
What can you do?
Talking about the drunk guy. Shout out to the fucking drunk guy I played an 8K pot with at fucking 2-3 600 max buy-in. Which I ran at the Jewel, which I ran into last night randomly, just whatever. And he reminded me about the hand, or I reminded him.
I'm sorry, are you back in action?
Huh? No, I was just
Okay,
playing
because I was
2-3.
going to need the collective, so.
I was just playing 2-3, whatever. And like, yeah, it was just absurd. It was absurd. He just ruined my life.
How do people give you so much action?
Yo, I had top set. He had 5-4.
Wow.
You had the best hand.
4-bet pot. Just comes 8-7-6.
Wow.
Night,
See?
Connie.
Told you had the best hand.
It was a rough one. It was like 9 in the morning, playing fucking 14 hours. Crazy life. All right, anyway.
So it was a 4-bet pot and you had top set on 8-7-6.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we found the culprit.
Well, we were just very deep, and he was very drunk and just playing with the.
And you were the 4-better?
Huh?
You were the 4-better?
No.
Ah, the 3-bet caller.
Yes.
Okay,
I
a
was a
little
4-bet.
bit more reasonable. I like his 4-bet. Fuck you.
He took the old Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
That's right. You got it. You got it.
No.
Mixed for it.
The Fantastic Four is suited. It sparkles. It's fucking shiny. He put 4-5 off in my face.
Wow. Okay, that's whatever the opposite of Fantastic Four is.
Okay. Well, fuck you, I guess.
It was fuck you.
Well, once again, thank you for that wonderful contribution. I have no idea what I was saying prior.
I think we were discussing strat against drunk fellas.
Well, I think we were talking strategy, but hey, Conrad played a big pot, guys.
It was talking about drunk
Do
fellas.
you guys want to talk a little more about Conrad's big pot?
It was about the drunk fella.
Okay, can you parallel the two of them together now? How this big pot correlates to the strategy? Because I'm lost.
Maybe think about it.
Oh, okay. Hey, you ruminate on that for a little while Hunt and I try to figure out what the fuck it is we're doing here.
Question, how many episodes do we have left before you just fire Connie on air?
I
because
can't
you're so
fire him.
frustrated?
Impossible.
I can't fire him. He's an adopted
Impossible.
child at this point. Like, I need him to emancipate himself.
I'll try a half-hearted
Impossible.
segue here. I'm going to assume that the strategy for playing against a very loose player who's maybe had a little too much to drink is to probably play more pots than you should against him. I assume most of the table is probably in the mindset of like, oh, okay, I'm going to catch this guy when I actually have a hand.
I think that the thing people overlook a lot is that a massive portion of your EV against these players comes from being able to grow the pot on the earlier streets and just have way more equity than you ever should normally, as opposed to what people assume, which is I'm going to try to make a really big hand
Right.
and
then
wait
get 'em.
until a later street and try to get paid off, because that doesn't happen anywhere near as much as like you manage to flop a good draw and you just manage to play a really massive pot with it, and maybe you just get it all in against a worse draw or something like that. That's an incredibly high EV spot that's actually relatively common. Or just 4-bet jamming with a hand that never normally would 4-bet jam, but villain might call it off with just king high or something.
So you want to bloat the pot early because he's playing too many hands and he's not folding.
Well, that yes, but also because the fold equity that you do get is worth a lot. Being able to take pocket deuces and get any overcards to fold on the earlier streets is really valuable, because you're just not going to realize enough equity post flop, even against a wide range. So it kind of comes down to when players' ranges are really wide, there's only specific circumstances in which you actually benefit from allowing them to continue for multiple streets. And it's usually when your hand is strong enough that it's really robust and your hand is not going to decrease in equity on later streets very often. In a lot of cases, you really just benefit a lot from bloating the pot earlier and either denying equity or forcing them to just continue without enough equity overall.
Yeah, I think that kind of highlights the biggest pitfalls that people make whenever the action is too wild. They don't take it upon themselves, and this is what I was saying, where you can actually have a strategy that allows you to win more than your fair share of that loss rate that these spewy players are offering to you. And it really comes down to risk aversion versus being risk on. So many people want to try to trap the drunk.
Yeah.
Right? They just want to try to lay in the weeds, and it's exactly what Guapo just said. They try to play more hands. It's not about playing more hands. It's about playing bigger pots with the hands that you already play. So if you flop middle pair, you don't have a bluff catcher against a guy who's playing deck. Right? You have a hand that can potentially bloat the pot.
You have value.
Exactly.
Right. Like you might have like middle pair, but you have 65, 70% equity.
Correct.
Right.
That's the thing, is people don't recognize how linear value scales whenever your opposition just has a bunch of hands that are worth near zero.
Yeah.
Right? And when they have to try to navigate all of these hands that are worth somewhere between 5% equity and 25% equity, but they're facing aggression with them, they're going to make egregious errors. So it's just punch, counterpunch. You just have to continually play a bunch of ridiculously large pots with hands that do not qualify in the theoretical realm, right? You just play all in pots with nines pre versus the drunk, because why wouldn't you? For 200 big blinds.
Yeah, he might just have ace 5 and
Exactly.
yeet it in.
And not even just like ace 5, because maybe that's, but like he might have ace 5 off.
Right. Yeah.
Right. He might just like look at a king and just decide like, fuck this guy this time. And that's like the whole aspect of it. It's not making sets. It's flopping top pair and trying to decipher between, am I trying to front load all of this money now, or am I trying to trap with this hand? And again, to Hunt's point, that just really comes down to board texture. If you flop an ace on ace 7 deuce, like, yeah, okay, you can play more bluff catchy, but watch what that gets you. Because even the drunk knows that when you call a big bet on ace 7 deuce, you probably don't have a deuce.
Especially when you're the person that's not giving action.
Right. Exactly.
And the drunk is very aware of what the fuck's going on at the table for the most part. Like, just more in tune of, like, not cards, but, like, people. Like,
Right. They know, like, oh, this person's tight, this person's loose.
Exactly. And they're very, they're very open to say it for the most part.
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
for sure.
When it comes down to it.
And they're just, what ends up happening is you let them over realize with low equity hands. So if they have a hand like 4 deuce on ace 7 deuce and they bet big, and you take a hand like ace 10, you're like, I'm going to bluff catch. Like, yeah, you're not making any errors. Like, of course he's going to punt into you. But the difference is when he doubles with the 4 deuce on a turn brick and you call again, he's only putting the third bet in when the river's a 4 or a deuce.
Yep.
And you're paying it 100% of the time because he's the drunk guy. The problem is now when the river is not a 4 or a deuce and he checks to you and now you value bet your ace 10, he just has a very clear fold.
Yep.
And you're playing into that strategy where it's like, yeah, he's bleeding a bunch of chips early, but he's bleeding them anyway.
And countering this means that you're raising on flop and turn?
Absolutely. You just start piling money in and don't care if you run into ace jack, ace queen, ace king. It doesn't matter.
Like if he has it, he has it.
You're 4 betting pre, you're 5 betting pre.
Right.
Like, whatever you need to do to maximize the likelihood of just eventually potentially playing an all-in pot against a worse hand. Like if you are gonna, if the action is going to escalate to the point where you can 5-bet jam ace jack and get called by worse, nothing is going to be more profitable than that, right? Nothing is going to be more valuable than getting in 300 bigs with the best hand.
And I think people think they think what you just said is wrong. They think like, why would I want to get it in with ace jack where it's a potential flip?
Exactly.
Or I'm even a 70% favorite. I can get it in where this guy's drawing dead.
I agree.
All I have to do is wait till I get flop that set or flop a flush or turn, and then I can get him dead.
Definitely.
You guys are really fucking up me seeing rivers. Can you stop, please? What the fuck is wrong? What is wrong with this conversation? This conversation is everything wrong.
Well, you might have to not be fake action Connie anymore.
I gotta see rivers here. Relax. Jesus.
What's going to stop you from seeing rivers? You're not a drunk guy. You're the nit.
I don't.
How hard is it to see
I don't
rivers
know where
when you're
you
the
play
nit?
poker or where you've ever seen me play poker or cash, because I am the absolute opposite of a nit. And
This
it's
guy's out here
crazy. That's the only
advertising.
thing you say.
He's out here advertising, man. I ain't buying it.
You can ask anybody in the streets,
I
man.
don't believe this.
They
for
know
once.
Conrad's a fucking
I asked
psychopath.
Melissa. She told me. She's like,
That's because she
Conrad's
always,
fake action, man.
That's because I know she's gonna pay me every single time. So why would I ever fucking bluff her? I just 2x pot and she just calls. Sure, thank you. I don't bluff her. Never bluffing her.
You know, it's incredible you're not rich.
What do you mean?
With simple strategies like these that they're foolproof, really.
Well, I mean that's against a person. That's a certain human.
Wow.
I'm never bluffing her.
Do it to everybody,
it's
right?
free money.
Do it to everybody. You do certain things against every individual based off of how they're going to pay, and then we move on.
I think there's just to get away from you and Conrad bitching at each other for a minute. There's another part of the game that this speaks to, which is the idea that you mentioned that even the drunk person kind of has an idea of who's giving action and who's not. And what I'm referring to is that you don't have the option to just take the really good spots. because if you just take the really good spots, they're not really good spots anymore. Because even a player that's adapting in a very basic way, they have an understanding that if you always have it when you get into a pot, the value of you always having it goes down. Right?
Yeah, and then you
they are just not going to put in as much money when you're in the pot. But if you're playing a bunch of hands and you're giving a bunch of action, they're going to continue putting money in with the worst hand a lot of the time, and you're going to actually make more money that way.
And you finally make the nuts against them. You can't believe they folded.
Right.
You're
You can't believe they folded. And
Oh
the
my
reason
God,
they
this guy
folded,
plays every hand, and now I finally have
Right.
it, and they fold.
Precisely. And the reason they fold is because they know that you're trying to just make the nuts against them.
Right.
And
Yeah.
and this is actually a really common thing. It happens in tournaments as well. You get players who just like splash around every hand at the early levels, and then when they actually play a big pot, they just always have it, and it's because they're trying to they're trying to like live off the perception that they're playing way more hands than they actually are, and they're also responding to the fact that everybody in their environment is saying, well, I'm just going to wait for this guy to punt it off, and I'm just going to have a really good hand. So as soon as you put any kind of substantial amount of money in the pot, they know that you just have it, and they slow down, and they only actually get it in on the river when they actually have it.
All right, let's stop exposing Conrad's strategy. Like,
So tilted. I think that I think like we're solving the case where one person is driving all the action and he becomes the target. But I think that there are other games that may be pain points for specifically risk averse players, where the entire environment itself is just like swept up in the action. So these will be games, you'll see them in Texas plenty. And I see them a lot in private games where certain things happen that everybody just like stand-up game's a good indicator, right? When the stand-up game happens and a bunch of people start getting stacked, you realize that everybody's primed, right? They're like primed to be too loose. They're primed to start gambling, stuff like that. What then happens there afterwards is you'll see a lot of like cold calling of 3-bets. You'll see a lot of multi-way 3-bet pots, a lot of multi-way 4-bet pots even, where people are just like totally disregarding the action and the formations as they are and just racing to a flop to play bingo. And these are sometimes the most frustrating games on the planet, even from my perspective of somebody who wants action, right? I want controlled action. I want there to be people who are just like call folding too much, right? And generally the way that that's going to occur is people are playing way too loose pre, but they're still very respectful to investing too much money, right? So generally the way you control this is through your sizings, whether it's a larger opening size or more specifically a much larger 3-bet size that no longer gets cold called behind. Now all of a sudden you're able to manipulate that scenario where everybody's primed and looking to play bingo, but you're getting them isolated in heads up situations or maybe 3-way at the worst. Those are easy to be navigated. What becomes really tricky is when you start investing a bunch of money and you go 5 ways. Single raise pot, 3-bet pots, doesn't really matter. The SPR gets wonky and it's very difficult to identify like where or how thinly you can go for value, because that's the big difference here. When you're targeting one guy who's just putting in infinite money with bad hands, you get to really stretch where the line is for a value hand, right? And you really get to be expansive as far as like what the worst type of hand is that we can bet for value. But when you go 5 ways against a bunch of wide open ranges, it kind of works in the inverse. Your value almost starts to tighten up, not because collectively they are anything other than the drunk guy, but because there's 5 of them, right? So collectively, they all have ranges as wide as the drunk guy, perhaps. But the problem is all 5 of them also are able to be concentrated to the top in some sort of capacity. So you might get through 4 that were all at the bottom of range, but that 5th one now represents the top of the drunk guy's range and just has it.
Now you're basically playing a bomb pot.
Right.
You're like you converge from a spot where there's a big difference between a spot where your range is really tight and everybody else is really wide, and you're in a great spot because you get to play aggressively and nobody else can, or you're now in a spot where everybody's range is really wide and it's basically a bomb pot because everybody's range is the top 30% of the deck, and it's just a game of who can try to deny equity a little bit more often, or who can protect themselves against running into it, and it just becomes a very complex game.
Right. You see that a lot in stream games, I think.
Yeah.
It's heavily encouraged. Everybody VPIPs over 30%. Like you get in there, there's a lot of multi-way pots. It's a lot of like basically being up against middle of range over and over and over again, which means that you're going to face a lot more top pairs. You're going to face a lot more draws that just are sticky and don't really want to fold. And I still think it boils back down to sizing. It's not that you reduce your aggression frequency. It's that you manipulate sizings in such a way that allows you to put in the last hammer bet whenever you are able to polarize ranges. So generally, like, this is going to come with increasing sizing pre-flop a little bit in order to try to narrow the field, and then drastically decreasing sizes post. You're going to be doing a lot of 10% betting, 25% betting, a lot of multiple streets of betting sub half pot, where that's just not really a thing in theory in heads up pots. Only on board texture changes do we really go like quarter pot, 40% pot, 40% pot, in position type of stuff, right? But in a 5-way pot, it's very reasonable to like bet 10% on the flop, maybe lose one player, have the board stay static on the turn, and now put out a polarizing size of like third pot. Because that means a lot whenever you're still in a 4-way scenario. The fact that you're even willing to bet twice just means a lot, you know? And now, like, say you do get the pot heads up and it's very clear that both of you are trending polar. Well, now maybe some big bets can come in on the end, or maybe you're just going to play check back with a lot of hands that could otherwise be qualified as a value bet if you were heads up from the start, right? It's very reasonable that if you have a hand like ace king and you go 10% flop, 33% pot on the turn, and the board texture is something to the effect of like king 7 3 10, and then the river just comes off like a 6. It's like, can we value bet here? Probably, but like, what are we hoping to get call? You know, there shouldn't really be any calls. Like, it doesn't work the same as a heads up pot. Like 10x doesn't defend now because it does a good job of like unblocking bluffs and blocking some value or things along those lines, right? It's like, instead you're looking at a hand like king queen and you're just like, fuck, do I beat anything? Like, this has to be a two pair plus range, you know? Same thing with like aces, because now you open up the availability to more 2-pair that may be a little bit more cautious in putting in raises because it's just beat by better 2-pair. It's beat by sets. The hands that qualify to bet twice, even for the small size, tend to be a lot stronger, right? Like, it's very obvious what hands have to bet twice. You have to bet a set twice. You have to bet like top 2 twice, right? So those are now carving it out, where it's like in a heads up pot, it's like, well, you have to bet top pair, top kicker twice. You know, that's very obvious to us. So yeah, I mean, I think it's just about kind of recalibrating what value equates to, dependent upon what's making the dynamics wild. If it's one single individual, your value range drastically expands, and our goal is to just target this guy as much as possible, right? If it's a collection of people who are just playing way too wide, way too loose, etc., trying to make bingo, just understand that that's the strategy they're taking to the table. And when they aggress, they hit bingo. You know, you can kind of just play very honest poker in that regard, where it's just like kind of like dinking and dunking, getting your small bets, collecting all of this EV, because yes, the percentage of the pot bet is small, but the pot itself is large. So you're earning a lot of big blinds. You know, if you go 5 ways in a 3-bet pot for 10 blinds each, and you bet 10% pot on the flop and then 33% pot on the turn and get called in both spots, you're now playing a well over 100 big blind pot. That's pretty significant, you know? So you don't have to be quite as greedy whenever you get to the river. And you also don't have to be quite as greedy with like your turn double barrels. Like, you can check back protected more often, things of that nature. Point is that it really distills down to not being afraid of risk, because in all of these loose environments, the way to understand this is that everybody who's contributing to the environment being too loose is naturally losing big blinds per 100, period. To anybody who's playing well, they're losing big blinds per 100. Your sole job is to figure out the most efficient way to collect those big blinds per 100. And it comes with a lot of variance. So you have to lean in. Because as we kind of were mentioning on the onset of all this, live poker is very slow. You don't ever really reach the long run. And these outlier scenarios are very critical to capitalize on. Oftentimes, you're just going to be hamstrung to your distribution. You got to live with that. You can't force it. Can't just say, like, fuck it, I have 8-5 suited. We're balling.
It does feel brutal sometimes, right? When you're just like, you have a drunk guy, you just at a really crazy table, and you just look down at dust every hand. You just like stuff you can't open, stuff you can't call.
Yeah, but like if you get 200 hands with the guy, you're going to get 2 or 3 premium spots.
That's why you got to capitalize
and
on
you
those
have to win the maximum.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you just have to be like, you can't You can't have one of those 3 hands that you're going to get a session and just say like, that river's just not the best river in the deck. I'm going to check it back. He could have hit like a weird 2 pair. Yeah. No, fuck that. He's going to pay you with middle pair. You're all in. Yeah. You have to be. You have to be willing to risk on those margins. Otherwise, you are really hamstrung to just running fucking hot. And that's not really a strategy, you know? Yeah. Got to just pay.
See, it's just pay from the inverse perspective because it's just value bet. It's,
it's
not just call. It's just value bet because they're not folding.
Right. Yeah. You got anything to add, Conrad? Any big pots you want to run us through?
Not right now. I'll let you know though.
Okay.
I'll get to you. I'll let you know.
Any South Point strategies?
No, nothing right now, but I'll let you know.
Okay. Well,
don't even worry about it. I'll CSA will just come.
Right.
Yeah, you don't have to call. It will come.
If you could actually just wait for the crux of the show to chime in, that would be ideal.
What will happen is we'll talk about something, and then he'll chime in immediately afterwards, saying the same thing we just said, except he didn't hear us say it.
That's Brian. That's Brian. That's Brian.
It's an epidemic.
That's Brian.
You should have seen it pre-show. Actually, you were here for part of it.
with Brian.
That's right.
I was here for Brian. Yeah, I was here for that pre-show. That's true.
Pre-show all the time because I'm not listening to anything you guys are saying. Right. On the show, I actually tend to listen.
I will say Brian is an excellent listener when it comes to the show. That's going to do it for us. Don't forget, if you want more information on the Champions PGT, feel free to click the link in the pinned comment. It'll also be in the description below. Also, we are running 2 academies in May. Hunt will be leading the MTT one. That's going to run from the 28th to the 27th to the 30th. That was close. If you show up day 2, we'll still take you. I'll be heading the Cash Academy. That's going to be running from the 24th to the 26th.
25th to the
23rd.
23rd. Sorry, it's the 23rd to the 25th.
Okay. How many days off do we have? Jesus Christ.
We have one in the middle. The 26th. Nothing's going to be on the 26th. 23rd to the 25th, day off, and then 27th to the 30th.
Okay, fine. Well, you know what? I'm going to have 4 days off. I'm not coming to the MTT one.
Go to academy.software.io, and those dates are on the screen.
You're coming to the MTT one because we need to teach you how to play MTTs in 2024.
Exactly. True. Yeah, you got to get those caches up. Got to get to 100 caches this year, Burke.
This year?
This year, yeah.
11 caches?
11 caches? You could do that.
According to this Hendon Mob, I'm only averaging 4 a year.
That's because you only play 10 tournaments a year.
That's not true. That's just simply not true. All right, that's going to do it for us. We're going to be back tomorrow with our 500th episode. Tentatively, it is going to be an After Dark episode as I have an early start seat at Bellagio. Hopefully, we're going to have something in store for you guys. We'll see. It's a surprise to all of us.
Also, Taylor Swift's new album comes out.
Don't care. We'll be here tomorrow.
Out at 9 o'clock tomorrow night.
Don't care.
Maybe we'll coordinate both together.
Can't tell you how much I don't care.
Are we going to make this a watch party?
Yeah, listening party.
We will be here at 6 p.m. Pacific. Be sure to join us. We'll see you all then.
Peace.
Later.